So how fast can this actually be done? I'm going to go over how to speed run the Lost Archives objective-based dungeon. Now this is on World Tier 2 difficulty, and we kind of were trying stuff out at this point in time, and I was really glad that it worked. So as you watch this, I speed up when we get to the elites to mimic being on World Tier 1 and having a better gear and better builds. The longest part of this dungeon is actually running to the first section. Maybe having a shout barbarian with rallying cry or some other just speed-based characters would really help tremendously. A group of 4 rogues would annihilate this probably under a minute. So as we're going through this, imagine you have a lot of practice. Imagine you have really good gear and you are running this with a really good group. And I'm going to go over how this all works in detail after we take a look at this little quick run here, just so you can kind of see that it takes about 1.5 minutes to get the objective and to start the boss for this fight here. Once you get good at it, it'll probably be under 1 minute. So you'll be able to spawn the boss in 1 minute, down the boss in a few seconds, and you'll be able to restart in about 1.5 minutes. And I'm sure if you are against supports, you're going to think that, oh, you can just use dash and shadow step or some other like 1 or 2 utility skills on your bar to achieve the same goals, which is completely true. There is a chance that this is not as useful in this situation, that changing skills isn't as big of a deal for this specific type of dungeon. As you see, I've ran this where I only needed dash and shadow step. But the purpose of this video is really to show you how this could work in a situation that we just don't even know about yet. All right, so let's look at this in a little more detail. You're going to want to have a balanced group. Having a trash killer, and we used a really beastly ice orc who did crazy damage. We had a druid that kind of ran like a CC healing support-ish build. And then we had 2 rogues where the other rogue ran the typical barrage build, but mine was set up for single target. I ran Heartseeker with rapid fire, poison imbuement, poison trap, and I like running dash and shadow step just because I like the utility overall. This build did really well for me for Ashava and it really puts out some big damage. You don't have to run everybody doing AoE damage. You want some single target DPS. I'd recommend probably 2 single target DPS and then your Ice Orc or whoever running more kind of the AoE abilities to help control the trash. As far as builds go, there are plenty out there. Go take a look. But overall, building is pretty crazy right now. Now, a lot of people hate on my support build kind of mentality, but this is going to show you guys how it works in actual practice. In Diablo 4, you're probably not going to have like full support runs. You're going to change out your abilities as you go. So the trick to this is that we're going to get gear that gives plus skill points to all of one type of skill. So as you see here, my amulet gives +1 rank to all imbuement skills and +1 rank to all subterfuge skills, which was really nice, especially for doing this specifically. And if you remember from my dual spec video, we're going to use the S button to change into the objective-based support rogue. And that's going to involve using utility-based skills. So your movement speed skills, which I already have in my bar, which is dash and shadow step. Also, concealment is very important for this. I tried running without concealment at first when we were doing testing, and it didn't quite work right. Now, I also changed between running smoke bombs or keeping the poison trap. Once I got better at it, I found I didn't need the smoke bomb. But let's look at what happens if you get into areas where you have a lot of mobs and makes things really hard to grab. You're going to have to kite the mobs a little bit farther away from the objective and then use dash and concealment once you get on the objective. As you see in this attempt here, I didn't know that concealment was that important, so it was on cooldown when I went for the objective. You also see that you can take damage while you're getting the objective, but if you take too much damage, then it'll cancel the progress bar and you have to start over. To do that, just slowly zigzag your way kind of away from the objective. Try to keep those mobs coming after you, doing your circles and everything. I was like, and then dash back. Drop a poison trap, drop a smoke bomb, whatever you need to use, but make sure to pop concealment before you try to grab the objective. Now, once you have the objective, one neat thing here is that all of your movement skills work, all of them. So you can just head back to the main area and you're good to go. Now, for the perfect run, both groups will come up at the same time and put the objectives on the pedestals. If you start the boss fight now, all of the extra mobs will run away and you can just burn down the boss. But while the boss is spawning, you have to swap from your support build into your DPS build. Now, this could just be 1 or 2 skills, or you might have 2 or 3. It really just kind of depends on you and what skills you like to run for this kind of a setup. It's also going to depend later on in late game how challenging these dungeons really are. This trick might work for really hard dungeons so that we don't have to fight all those mobs and take all that time to complete a dungeon. specifically for nightmare dungeons where we're going to be trying to level our runes. Sigils might be hard to get, so it's really hard to say what's going to happen when we get there. It might be efficient to do the S-Rogue setup, get all of the mobs back to the center, and just use a bunch of AoE skills to annihilate all the monsters, and then spawn the boss after, giving you more XP, maybe more gold, maybe extra drops, just a more efficient farming method. Speaking of efficiency, for those of you still with me, I have some extra tips here. First, if you have 2 rogues, they can both go to the objective while the rest of the party stays in the middle. Second, I think an Ice Sorc with teleport can do this job just as well as a rogue, maybe even better. Third, once you're finished this fight, use the emote wheel to leave the dungeon, and then you'll be able to knock out that event that is often spawned right there. But if there's no event, there's also the cellar up top. So you can clear that cellar and then head back to the dungeon. Oh, you can do both of them. And if you want to help prove my wife wrong, make sure to subscribe so I can keep making videos instead of having to cut the grass, please.